jury found Karmelo Anthony guilty of first-degree murder in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf during an argument at a high school track meet last year. An argument prosecutors argued from which Anthony could have walked away. Anthony is now telling the court he can't afford an appellate attorney, and he's asking for a public defender. That is despite the more than $600,000 a fundraising page was gathered for his family, funds which apparently have all been spent for, quote, legal defense and family relocation. By now, the details are well known. Karmelo Anthony, the captain of his school's football and track teams, stabbed the 6-foot, 200-pound football star and straight-A student Austin Metcalf in the heart.
Some images tell a story that no courtroom ever could. A shaved head, a sleeveless prison uniform, a blank expression staring into the camera, no lawyers standing beside him, no supporters outside the courthouse, no television debates, just a single booking photograph marking the beginning of a sentence that could consume the prime years of a young man's life. When Texas prison officials released a new image of Karmelo Anthony following his transfer into state custody, it instantly reignited one of America's most divisive criminal cases. For months, the public had argued over every detail of the fatal confrontation that ended with 17-year-old Austin Metcalf losing his life at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. Some believed justice had finally been served. Others continued to question the outcome and supported Anthony's claim of self-defense. But once the prison gates closed behind him, the arguments outside no longer changed the reality inside. Behind razor wire and concrete walls, there are no social media campaigns, no courtroom cameras, and no second chances waiting around the corner. Every inmate begins with the same harsh reality: a prison identification number, strict routines, and the weight of every decision that led them there. The newly released prison photograph was not dramatic because of what it showed. It was dramatic because of what it represented. The teenager whose face had dominated headlines was now another inmate entering the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to begin serving a 35-year sentence after a jury rejected his claim of self-defense and found him guilty of murder. Shortly afterward, his attorneys filed a notice of appeal while he was transferred into state custody. The image spread across the internet within hours. Many posts claimed it revealed a young man already broken by prison. Others exaggerated what could be known from a single official photograph. In reality, the released image shows Anthony with a shaved head in prison-issued clothing after his transfer to the Texas prison system. Beyond that, claims about his physical or emotional condition inside prison remain unverified and should be treated cautiously. What is verified is far more sobering than the rumors. One teenager is dead. Another is beginning decades behind bars. 2 families have been permanently changed. And a split-second confrontation at what should have been an ordinary school sporting event continues to spark fierce debates about self-defense, responsibility, justice, and consequences. Tonight, we follow the verified trail, from the ordinary lives of 2 teenagers before they ever crossed paths, to the decisions that changed everything, to the prison photograph that has become a haunting symbol of where this story stands today. Before we continue, if you appreciate carefully researched true crime stories based on verified facts, please consider subscribing to Cold Case Files, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Before the headlines, the court hearings, and the prison photograph that would spread across social media, Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf were simply 2 Texas teenagers whose lives followed very different paths until they intersected on one tragic morning. Austin was a student-athlete who enjoyed football and track and was remembered by family, friends, and teammates as hardworking and driven. His future seemed filled with the ordinary milestones of high school before college and adulthood. Karmelo Anthony was also a student with ambitions of his own, but everything changed when both teenagers attended a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas, on April 2, 2025. According to evidence presented in court, what began as a disagreement between the two escalated within moments into a fatal confrontation. The speed at which events unfolded would leave one teenager dead and another facing a murder charge that would dominate national headlines. As investigators gathered evidence and prosecutors prepared their case, the tragedy became the center of intense public debate, with supporters and critics on both sides arguing over what had happened and whether Anthony's claim of self-defense was justified. Ultimately, a jury rejected that defense and found him guilty of murder, leading to a lengthy prison sentence. Cases like this remind us that a single decision made in seconds can alter countless lives forever. The loss of Austin Metcalf continues to be felt by those who knew and loved him, while Anthony now faces the consequences imposed by the justice system. If you're enjoying this carefully researched investigation, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Cold Case Files, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into the cases that continue to captivate the nation. As investigators worked to reconstruct the events of that day, a clearer picture began to emerge, not of a long-running feud, but of a confrontation that escalated with alarming speed. Testimony and evidence presented during the trial indicated that the fatal encounter began over a dispute involving seating beneath a team tent at the track meet. What should have ended with students simply walking away, instead, became a chain of decisions that neither family could ever undo. The prosecution argued that Anthony's actions went beyond what was necessary, pointing to witness testimony and physical evidence presented in court. The defense, however, maintained that Anthony believed he was in danger and acted in self-defense. Those competing narratives would become the central issue of the trial, with jurors tasked with weighing testimony, forensic evidence, and the circumstances leading to the fatal stabbing. As the case gained national attention, social media complicated the search for truth. Edited clips, unverified claims, and emotionally charged opinions spread rapidly online, often presenting speculation as fact. While many people formed strong opinions before the trial concluded, the courtroom relied on sworn testimony, cross-examination, and evidence rather than internet narratives. Looking back, one of the most unsettling aspects of this case is how ordinary the setting was. A school sporting event is supposed to be a place where students compete, families cheer, and memories are made. Instead, it became the scene of irreversible tragedy. In the aftermath, investigators focused on separating fact from rumor, knowing that every piece of evidence would be scrutinized. The jury would eventually hear that evidence in full before reaching its verdict, but for everyone involved, the consequences of those few moments had already become permanent. The events of April 2, 2025, unfolded in a matter of seconds, but their impact will last for generations. During a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas, a confrontation broke out between Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf near a team tent. According to the evidence presented during the trial, what began as a dispute quickly escalated into a physical encounter. Prosecutors argued that Anthony produced a knife during the confrontation and stabbed Austin Metcalf once in the chest. The wound proved catastrophic. Despite the immediate efforts of first responders and emergency medical personnel, Austin died from his injuries. His death transformed what had begun as an ordinary school event into an active homicide investigation, leaving classmates, coaches, and parents struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The defense later maintained that Anthony acted in self-defense, arguing that he believed he faced an imminent threat. Prosecutors challenged that claim, presenting witness testimony, physical evidence, and forensic findings they said demonstrated that the use of deadly force was not legally justified. Those competing accounts became the central issue that jurors would ultimately decide. For everyone present, the memory of that afternoon would remain unforgettable. Students who had arrived expecting to compete instead witnessed a scene of panic and confusion. Coaches rushed to secure the area while law enforcement began interviewing witnesses and preserving evidence. Within hours, news of the fatal stabbing spread far beyond Frisco, drawing nationwide attention. As investigators pieced together the timeline, every statement, photograph, and forensic finding became crucial. The case would soon move from the track field to the courtroom, where the evidence, not online speculation or public opinion, would determine Anthony's legal fate. Whatever perspective people held, one heartbreaking fact remained unchanged. A young life had been lost, and another had been forever altered. As the investigation intensified, detectives focused on assembling a timeline based on physical evidence, witness statements, and digital records rather than the growing storm of online speculation. Investigators interviewed students, coaches, and spectators who had been present during the confrontation. They secured the scene, collected forensic evidence, and reviewed available videos that captured portions of the incident. Every detail was carefully examined to determine exactly how the fatal encounter unfolded. The case quickly became one of the most closely watched criminal investigations in Texas. Social media was flooded with opinions, edited clips, and unverified claims, many of which conflicted with the evidence later presented in court. Law enforcement repeatedly emphasized the importance of relying on the official investigation instead of rumors circulating online. Prosecutors built their case around eyewitness testimony, forensic findings, and the sequence of events leading to Austin Metcalf's death. The defense argued that Karmelo Anthony believed he was acting in self-defense. Ultimately, those competing arguments were tested in court, where both sides had the opportunity to present evidence and challenge the other's claims before a jury. As public interest grew, the case became more than a criminal prosecution. It evolved into a national conversation about youth violence, self-defense laws, and the consequences of decisions made in moments of intense conflict. Every court filing and legal development attracted widespread attention, while both families endured unimaginable grief under the glare of public scrutiny. If you're finding this investigation informative and appreciate fact-based true crime storytelling, please like this video, subscribe to Cold Case Files, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue producing carefully researched documentaries that separate verified facts from speculation, while honoring the real people affected by these tragic events. The courtroom became the place where months of investigation were tested against the legal standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Prosecutors presented witness testimony, forensic evidence, and the timeline they believed demonstrated that Karmelo Anthony's use of deadly force was not legally justified. The defense maintained that Anthony acted in self-defense, arguing that he believed he faced an imminent threat during the confrontation. Over the course of the trial, jurors examined the evidence, listened to expert testimony, and considered the accounts of those who had witnessed the incident. Their responsibility was not to weigh public opinion or social media debates, but to determine whether the evidence supported the charge under Texas law. Every piece of testimony and every exhibit contributed to a clearer picture of the events that unfolded at the Frisco track meet. After deliberating, the jury returned a guilty verdict, rejecting Anthony's claim of self-defense. The court subsequently sentenced him to 35 years in prison for the murder of Austin Metcalf. Following the sentencing, Anthony's legal team filed a notice of appeal, beginning the next stage of the legal process. An appeal does not overturn a conviction automatically. Instead, it asks a higher court to review whether legal errors occurred during the trial that could have affected the outcome. For Austin Metcalf's family, the verdict represented a measure of accountability, though no sentence could restore the life they had lost. For Anthony and his family, it marked the beginning of a lengthy prison term and an uncertain future as the appellate process moves forward. When the courtroom emptied and the cameras moved on, the consequences remained. One family continued to grieve a son who would never come home, while another faced the reality of decades separated by prison walls. Long after the verdict was delivered, the emotional impact of this case continued to ripple through two families and an entire community. For the family of Austin Metcalf, the loss was immeasurable. They were left not only with memories of a teenager described by those who knew him as a dedicated student-athlete, but also with the painful reality that birthdays, graduations, and future milestones would forever be marked by his absence. Friends, classmates, and members of the Frisco community mourned the tragedy, remembering how a routine school track meet became the setting for an event that no one expected to witness. Vigils and tributes honored Austin's life, while many called for greater efforts to prevent violence among young people and to encourage peaceful conflict resolution before disagreements escalate into irreversible consequences. At the same time, Karmelo Anthony's family faced a different kind of hardship. While the jury found him guilty and the court imposed a 35-year prison sentence, his loved ones continued to support him through the legal process, including the filing of an appeal. The case became deeply polarizing, with public opinion often divided along competing interpretations of the evidence. Even after the trial ended, debates continued online, sometimes fueled by misinformation rather than verified facts. Behind every headline, however, are real people whose lives have been permanently altered. One family continues to grieve the loss of a son. Another faces years of prison visits, legal appeals, and the consequences of a conviction that will shape the rest of Anthony's life. As public attention gradually fades, the lasting lesson remains painfully clear. A confrontation that lasted only moments has left wounds that may never fully heal, reminding us that the consequences of violence extend far beyond the courtroom. The story of Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf is not one with a satisfying ending. It is a tragedy measured not only by a courtroom verdict, but by everything that can never be recovered. A young life was lost, another young life was forever changed, and two families now carry burdens that will last far beyond the headlines. The prison photograph that sparked renewed public attention is more than just an image. It represents the reality that follows a criminal conviction, a life lived behind locked doors, strict routines, and years that cannot be reclaimed. At the same time, no prison sentence can erase the grief experienced by Austin Metcalf's family or restore the future that was taken from them on that April day. As Anthony's appeal moves through the legal system, the conviction and sentence remain in effect unless a higher court rules otherwise. Whatever the outcome of that appeal, the events of the Frisco track meet will remain a painful reminder of how quickly ordinary moments can turn into irreversible tragedy. Cases like this also remind us to be cautious about the information we consume. Rumors, edited videos, and sensational claims often spread faster than verified facts. The truth is found in evidence, court records, and credible reporting, not in speculation shared across social media. If you found this investigation informative, please like this video, share it with others, subscribe to Cold Case Files, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into real criminal cases based on verified facts. As we close this case, one question remains. If a confrontation lasting only seconds can leave two families forever changed, what can we do, as individuals and as a society, to prevent another ordinary day from ending in irreversible tragedy? Thank you for watching Cold Case Files. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next investigation.